And this leads me on to what I feel is a particularly important point when it comes to animosity in general. I think when people want to improve and just generally develop themselves, we can often come at this with a sort of chip on the shoulder element where we feel as though there's a point to prove and there's someone to say, haha, look what I did, look what you don't have. Case in point, Exhibit A is the villain arc that often occurs when you go through a breakup. How often is that propelled forward by you wanting to show someone what they've missed? This is a potent fuel. A lot of the time we can get a lot done when we use hatred or animosity or that chip on the shoulder as our fuel to push us forward. In actual fact, we have to learn to get rid of this feeling. The longer that you decide to fuel your efforts with the toxic fuel that is hatred and animosity, the less likely you are to actually be happy. Now, you might find yourself completing and achieving a lot of things, but you're not working within the parameters of good spirit. You're working essentially for someone else. You're no longer looking and thinking, I'm going to do this because it's good for me. You're thinking, I'm going to do this to show you. And that's not a good feeling. Now, this recently occurred to me when I decided that a old friend of mine and I should have a conversation about why we were no longer friends. Now, we sort of drifted apart over a few years, and this came to a head at a point where I decided that I just didn't want to talk to this person anymore because I was hurt. And years later, as in what is now about 2 weeks ago, I decided that this person should know how I felt, because we never actually spoke about why it was that he and I stopped talking. Quick drink break. So I decided to send him a text. I decided to tell him exactly why it was that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. Now, in doing this, I wasn't doing anything for his sake. I was doing this entirely for my sake. I wanted to be rid of that feeling of animosity that had continued to be that chip on my shoulder. I realised that I was finding myself in more and more positions where that negative voice in my head that tells me I'm insufficient was fueled by this fervent desire to just constantly make that point known that, oh, I'm getting one up on this person. If I was ever not doing work, the initial thought that would come into my mind is, all the while you're not doing work, you're not proving this person wrong. You're not telling them exactly what you wanted to tell them. And I realised that this was not conducive to success. I realised that I was unhappy thinking this way. I was getting a lot done, but I wasn't happy with any of it. It just was not working for me anymore to feel as though I had to prove this person wrong. And in actual fact, I didn't have to prove this person wrong because they had no idea what I was doing. So I was just shouting into the void of my own soul in many respects. I think it's very easy for us to feel as though we can't let go of these negative fuels that have brought us to a better place, because we feel as though the strong-arming, hard perspective is one that is inherently strong, and that if we decide to be kind and forgiving, that we are being weak. Kindness, unfortunately, to the mind of the hustler or the hard worker is weakness. And this is wrong. It's not true at all. And I can speak from experience in saying that there absolutely is a way to still have that same desire to improve and work forward, but do so from a positive angle. And it's absolutely critical that we learn to do this, because a point that I will continue to shout from the rooftops is that the only reason anyone decides to do anything is because they want to be happy at some point. Now, this is case in point when it comes to improvement, because you want your life to improve. You want your quality of existence to enhance. Now, that's not going to happen all the time that you feel you're only as good as your output and you're only as good as proving someone else wrong. There's a directly negative connotation attached to this train of thought, and it's one that you need to abolish immediately. Do not fall into the trap of feeling as though you cannot work hard and work well all the while being kind. Or as well, another point, something that I'm absolutely tackling myself at the moment, is feeling as though love will make you weak. I notice at the moment I'm sort of struggling with the idea of, if I was to be in a relationship, I would feel loved. And if I feel loved, then maybe I won't have that same hunger to work. Now, this is one that I'm going to have to speak from a more sort of hypothetical perspective, because it's something I'm working with myself. But it's still worth talking about, just because it's helpful for us to just think about things sometimes. It might spark an idea in your head. If you can't be loved and still do the right things, you're not actually improving yourself as such. We know at some point in our lives that we are going to be in a state of love. We're going to be in a family, or a sort of a new family, a married family. And if we can't learn to love and succeed on both fronts, then we're condemned to a sorry existence. I noticed that this sort of fear of getting into a position where you're cared for is directly linked to, if I don't have that feeling of insufficiency, I won't have the impetus to improve. Because at the core of self-development is this sort of feeling of insufficiency. It is essentially saying that what you currently are is not enough. Now, this is a problem that I think is difficult to navigate, because I think everyone should commit themselves to improving. But inherently, it is saying to yourself that there are things you need to do to be better than you are. And sort of the precursor to that is that in being better this way, you'll be more loved, or you'll be more valued. If we attach ourselves so much to this point that we can't work unless we're the underdog, then we are going to at some point feel very insufficient. Sort of in the way that we have tried to feel more than and fill that void, we're just going to make that chasm much deeper later down the line. I think it's very important for us to realise that hatred as a fuel is something that we need to learn to control. It absolutely is valuable in the short term for getting you to a point. If you are someone who is sick and tired of being bullied or being mistreated, or just yourself, and you want to change, then this negative feeling is absolutely valuable. But on the long term, it's something that you can't continue to rob yourself of having, or you can't continue to rob yourself of love and care, and voicing that to other people as well. I think all the while we can reduce the amount of tension and stress and pain in our lives, we should. And I think there's this sort of idea in the self-improvement world that hustle has to be dark. And I can tell you now, it doesn't have to be dark.